Well, it's been open for just over a month, but there has been no shortage of debate and controversy around Saskatoon's first medical marijuana dispensary. And joining me now is founder Mark Hauk. Thank you so much for coming in.
Thanks for having me.
So overall, let's start with how things have been going.
As far as the club's operations, they've been great. We've had tremendous. We're up to close to 400 members today, and we've had a tremendous amount of support from our members, our potential members, and our neighbors downtown.
So what challenges have there been for you then?
Certainly, there's no shortage of media attention and of people that. Folks like CanAmed and Action Justice Cannabis and other groups out there that are fighting against cannabis dispensaries across Canada. So we certainly deal with some of that fallout, if you will.
And now you have received a cease and desist letter from Health Canada. What were your thoughts after opening that notice?
Well, to be honest, it came via email Tuesday morning, and in the way it was sent, not addressed to anyone in particular, not signed by anyone in particular, threatening some pretty hefty threats. So honestly, we weren't even sure that it was real to begin with, but it certainly was, authenticated, and it was strange in the timing of it. 38 days before an election, giving us a 30-day cease and desist order when we, potentially could have a major shift in cannabis policy in this country. So I and many others, somewhat wrote it off as unfortunately some political games.
So is it going to change the way that you operate? No,
it's not, right? We don't have many choices here. We either operate or we don't, and we feel it imperative that we continue to operate, and our 400 members rely on us to provide them medical cannabis in a fair and dignified manner.
Now, in that notice, there was kind of mention of, it being passed along to the RCMP. Have you been contacted by any law enforcement?
No, we haven't, and so that's an interesting notion too. That Health Canada, a department that's here to protect Canadians' health, would order or ask the RCMP to do something, right? It's kind of a foreign thought in itself. But no, we haven't been contacted by anybody, and I have read a fair bit of out in Vancouver and Victoria Way, the police chief's reactions to the notion that RCMP squads would be rolling into their controlled cities and raiding dispensaries, and they dismissed it fairly quickly for whatever that's worth.
And so why, in your opinion, is it important to have a storefront like this one?
It's important because it's the only reasonable way to dispense medical cannabis to patients, and that's a fact, right? There is the notion of a mail order medicine system is just a bizarre one, right? We don't do it with any other medicine in this world. It's people are allowed, and again in a fair and dignified manner, to speak to a human being and to get their medicine immediately, right? I don't think any of us would accept if we got a prescription today for an antibiotic or a painkiller of some sort, and you had to get online and order it and wait days or weeks for it to come in the mail. None of us would find that acceptable, I'm sure.
Now, some people have brought up, the quality control of your products, that sort of thing. What would you have to say about that?
I would, any of those, those accusations thrown our way that we operate with lack of regulations, I would say I agree. And there's a reason I've been in front of City Council before we opened our doors asking for those regulations. Again, I'm not here fighting for Mark Hauk or any specific individual to be able to operate a medical cannabis dispensary. Ultimately, the answer is the federal government to come up with a program that allows community-based dispensaries, and those probably shouldn't be run by random people in the community, right? They probably should be run, as a pharmacy or groups like CanAmed or one of the licensed producers. I tend to agree with that, but the reality is they don't exist right now, and so people like me do risk their liberty to provide medical cannabis to the sick and dying patients of our community.
Well, I want to thank you so much for coming in. We've just kind of scratched the surface. I'm sure this is a debate that's going to last quite a while here in the city. We will have more on this after the break. Thank you again for coming in.
Thanks so much for having me.
Well, before the break, we spoke to the owner of Saskatoon's first medical marijuana dispensary, and now I am joined by Brent Zettel, CEO of Prairie Plant Systems. Thanks so much for coming in.
Good morning, Stephanie.
So I want to start with how Prairie Plant Systems differs from this dispensary, for those who might be a little confused with everything going on.
Oh, certainly. So what we have is being licensed by Health Canada to produce medical cannabis under a fairly strict regime that they inspect, and then we have to follow these guidelines that they give to us. And so we produce under that regime that's targeted to make patient-safe product, and then also manage so that we don't have diversion going on as well. So I keep the public safe as well. So it's designed as a production facility that has a system of checks and balances, that produces medicine in a way that all other medicines are produced in this country, with a system of accountability, with an audit trail, with the system of testing and all the things that need to make it truly a medicine for the patient, so that if they're starting to use it and dose appropriately for their conditions, that they can actually make sure that they get the right medicine that they're using, and it's the same every single time that they go to use it.
Okay. So what are your thoughts then on the Saskatchewan Compassion Club?
Well, right now, if it was within the law, we certainly would endorse or even support the idea of going and setting up dispensaries ourselves, because we too agree that there could be a little better interaction with the public. Right now it's designed as an online pharmacy model, meaning that everything is done remotely, either by phone or by shipping to them directly, and we have an on-site pharmacist as well that can interact. Now, having a dispensary that jumps the queue in the sense that it circumvents the laws of the land doesn't facilitate a system of accountability, and it creates risk for the patients particularly who are trying to rely on this as a medicine. It also puts the public at risk too, to a certain degree, because the unintended crowds that might, or individuals that might be going to it. So for the most important part about this is that it's not within the context of the regulations and the laws of the land. And the reason that it's there is to protect the patients and to protect the people who are trying to use it as medicine and to work within the system.
So are you saying you agree with Health Canada in opposing it then?
Well, I agree with Health Canada in the sense that we have to make sure that as a body, as a country, we have one set of rules that tries to be front of mind about making the product safe and a legal access for patients that still provides a reasonable access. We don't want to have it in such a way that it's causing some hardship for individuals to have access. But you also remember we're in transition. I mean, we lead the world in medical cannabis in terms of policy for accessing to the public, which was spurned on by the court systems, really. Now, the rest of the world's looking at us as an example. That's why it's been slow going. The transitions have been slow to a certain degree, but they are coming and they're making adjustments to make sure that everybody has appropriate access. But right now, we have our customer base, we have a 97% approval rating on how they're receiving the material, and it's sort of just dovetailed naturally with this phenomenon of online shopping. Now, I think we have to address it for those that don't have access to computers a little bit better, but at the same time, I think it's a system that's functioning, at least, and functioning well.
So do you think there will ever be a place for a medical marijuana dispensary? Do you ever see it in the future?
Well, funny you should ask that question. I think the pharmacies are the way that we distribute drugs.
Right.
In a normal system, the pharmacist is the one that helps dictate or helps the patient through the administering of that thing. And the evolution of this program, as I see it, would be a dispensing likely ultimately is going to go through the pharmacies. I've always said that from the beginning. I think that's where it's going to be. And they're essentially going to become the dispensaries of the future.
Great. Well, I want to thank you so much for coming in and, again, just scratching the surface of this ongoing debate. But thank you so much for coming in and sharing your side.
My pleasure, Stephanie.